Come on, push through it.
100. One for luck. 1,001. Hey, buddy. You all right? That was hard. That was hard. So I've just flipped this tyre 1,000 times up and down my garden. If I'm being really honest, when I woke up this morning after 3 bottles of wine with Emily last night and a bit of a 5:30 rude awakening from our middle child Ben, I wasn't feeling this. Last night when I was watching Beau Miles on YouTube and his eating tins of beans for 40 days, I was well inspired and motivated, and I'm like, right, I'm on lockdown, I can't go out, I could eat tin beans, but what can I do? And I decided this tyre, we've had this tyre since last summer, I decided it was time to flip it 1,000 times. You know, I hadn't been thinking about doing it before, but certainly the second it entered my head, I knew I had to do it. So I said to myself as I went to bed last night, I was laying in bed, not that late, 10:30, actually that's late for us, but 10:30 last night, we were laying in bed and I'm like, if I have a good night's sleep and I don't feel rough, I'll do it tomorrow. So I went to sleep, I had a rubbish night's sleep and I felt rough as anything when I woke up this morning. My actual plan was to flip 100 every hour. And I did a test flip yesterday of 50 when I was thinking about this. And 50 took me about 5 minutes. So I'm like, that's okay. And 50 is a length for the garden. And I'm like, that's okay. You know, I can easily do that. I can easily do their back once an hour, 10 minutes. But somehow, where I wasn't feeling very right, well, when I was feeling ropey this morning, I decided that I didn't want to do it 1 an hour. If I'm going to do it, I need to do it in bigger chunks. So it's going to hurt more, but not take up as much of my day. So I came out and I did 300. I did the 300 and I'm like, that's it. I can't do any more. I can't do any more. That's all I'm doing today. But you know what? A couple of hours later, a shower and another meal. And I'm like, yeah, why don't I go and give it another go? But this time I decided, well, I had to do 400 or nothing, because I didn't want to finish on 400. I could have finished on 200, something like that, but I was trying not to drag it out. So when I did 400 lunchtime, and oh my goodness, if I ached after 400 or 300, I certainly was now aching after 400, so that really hurt. But I want to tell you a bit more about why I have a Giant Tractor Tyre. So, got 3 kids, Lydia Rose, Ben, Joseph, 6, 4 and 2. And we've got a couple of businesses and they take up a lot of our time. And I quite like working out, so I had this idea after watching Baywatch with The Rock and Zach. If a giant tyre is good enough for The Rock and Zach Efron, then it's good enough for me in our garden. So one of our businesses is a mobile glamping business, and there's a campsite about 1.5 miles away where we do quite a bit of work at. And it's a big campsite, and as I'm driving around there last summer, I noticed this pile of giant tractor tyres, and I'm like, I can't believe it. But I'm there professionally, so I didn't want to kind of just rob a tyre. I certainly wasn't going to rob it, and I didn't even know how to ask for it because, you know, it was I'm there professionally, and I don't want to go, oh, hello there, you know I'm doing this work for you. Can I steal a giant tractor tyre, please? So luckily was pally with a couple of them, and sort of just laid down some groundwork. And throughout the summer, it's sort of, I thought it got forgotten about. And then I get this phone call one day, and it's like, Alan, if you want a tyre, just come and help yourself to a tyre. And I'm like, I want to go. I think it was Friday afternoon, and I'd got back, and the van was ready. The van was empty. We have a van for work, luckily, because it certainly wasn't going in the back of a Fiesta. And I jumped in the van. I had no one with me. I had no idea if there was going to be one big enough, if I was going to be able to lift it by myself. I'd never lifted a Giant Tractor Tyre, and I certainly didn't know if it was going to fit in the van. So there's 3 quite big things, but luckily I wasn't driving far on this one. And I got there, and there were these 3 ginormous, like, you know, you see these JCBs in films in quarries, like that big. And then luckily there was this one that seems big, but isn't that big compared to them. And I thought, well, I found a tyre. 1. Can I lift it? Yes. Will it go in the van, and can I get it in the van? Well, it turns out the answer to both those questions is yes, because about 30-40 minutes later I was back home with this tyre, plastering it all over social media. And that's it. That's where it started of my flipping my tractor tyre. Good enough for the Rockin' Baywatch and Zac Efron, then it's good enough for me. November was my tyre flipping month. I wanted to flip it every day, and we've got some good friends, Graham and Liz, and Graham's got a terminal diagnosis, and we've been helping to raise some money for them. And so I decided to flip it for them. That's what I was doing it for, and I did all my challenges that I did do for them. I ran every day, flipped a tyre every day. I can't remember what else I did. I did 100 burpees every day for a month, so I did 3,000 burpees. And a week into me flipping this tyre, and I ended up in hospital. I had a problem with my heart, had to go in on a blue light run, and rang 999, and they took me in, and I ended up spending a day, I think, in there, and then come home. But they said, you certainly can't be flipping no giant tyre. So that's it. I'd stopped. I was a week into my challenge, but luckily all of my friends and all of my family came in and they flipped it for me, and they joined in the flipping. It was an amazing month. Us seeing our friends and family come around and join in on this challenge, and support for Graham and Liz was amazing. So yeah, thank you to all of them.
Are you feeling all right?
Doing it, that's the point. I guess the other thing, one of my other motivations for doing things like this is my granddad. My granddad, and it's very apt that it has been VE Day in the past few days, 75 years, because it made me think a lot about my granddad. My granddad was a POW in Italy. He'd been in Africa. He was caught in Africa, El Alamein and all of that, and was in a POW camp in Africa. I've seen some pictures, pretty horrific, as you can imagine. And then got moved up into Italy. Italy was fractionally better, I believe, but you're still a prisoner of war in a camp in the 40s. Right, it's never going to be good. And my granddad escaped, and him and a couple of mates spent 3 weeks on escape and evasion, getting away from the Italians following them. And eventually they met, this happened to be towards the end of the war, they met the Canadian front line coming up from Africa. So they'd since, you know, the Allied had taken back Africa and were coming up through Italy, and met the Canadian front line. But the story for me doesn't stop there. That's kind of the beginning of the story, because the bit that always fascinates me is what happened next. It's that repatriation back to London. You know, so somehow he went back into the Allied forces, back into Africa, where goodness knows how long he was there. May have sent a letter to my nan, but he may have got home before the letter got to my nan. And then, you know, back up to, I think he then went to Scotland from Africa. How long did that take? Where in Scotland he was debriefed, and then eventually got back to London. And that whole story, and it inspires me. I want to be able to give my children and my grandchildren those stories when I'm old. And genuinely, that is one of my main inspirations for doing some of the things I do. I just want this whole world of stories to be able to share with my grandkids. And you know, my granddad, especially apt at the moment, is a massive inspiration for me in doing that. And I don't want to sit behind a desk for 30 years and come out the back and the grandkids go, what did you do? It's like, well, I was a professional typer or whatever. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're happy, it doesn't matter. And so that is why I do. And that really is why I flipped my tyre 1,001 times today. It's about my grandkids.